one has to really detect expansive contractive movement force. It's not just, okay, if you focus on the breath, that's expansion and contraction. You have to detect those flavors in it. And I wouldn't, you don't want to only do it with the breath forever, because the idea is you want to eventually be able to detect this in all sensory experiences all time. But the breath is a representative of this. There's three ways you can do it. You can just focus on the volumetric expansion on the in and the volumetric collapse on the out breath. So that would be one way. You're alternating expansion contraction in the sense of literally space getting larger or smaller. You can reverse it though. When you breathe in, the muscles contract and the linings of the bronchi and so forth sort of feel a tug inward. So remember, I always say pressure or space or et cetera, or force, right? So when you breathe in, there's actually a contractive force that's detectable. And when you breathe out, that releases. So there's an expansive force. So that reverses, that's the opposite polarity of the volumetric expansion and contraction. So one way you can work with the breath expansive contractive wise is in-breath is volumetric expansion, out-breath is volumetric contraction. Volumetric, pardon my geek speak, it just means with respect to how big something is, okay? How you would measure the volume, okay? Or, so you can expand on the in, contract on the out, or force-wise, you can contract on the in and expand on the out. Or if you want to get fancy, you can volumetrically expand and force-wise contract on the in and reverse that on the out. So you have a both on the in, a both on the out, but the roles of father and mother get reversed. And Sasaki Roshi says, when father finds mother's native village and mother finds father's native village, then father turns into mother and mother turns into father, okay? And they flip roles, and that's the only way that they can come back, et cetera, et cetera. So, well, you've got, you know, whichever one you want to call the native village, okay? But there's, if you want to call the volumetric thing sort of like surface, and then the other thing deep, right? So your surface expands on the in-breath, the depths contract on the in-breath, but then on the out-breath, they flip roles, right? The surface contracts, but the inside, the muscles stretch. So that's probably part of what he's talking about, but just a very small part. What I find is that by working with the breath that way, which is readily available, anybody can get, almost anyone can get the volumetric expansion contraction. Most people can detect the muscles, you know, doing the opposite. I find that working that way with the breath sort of sensitizes to the detection of similar phenomena in other sensory domains.